Hello students. Today we are going to study the chapter Chief Seattle's speech, which is in the syllabus of class 9th and 10th. This chapter is mostly neglected by the students as they consider it to be a difficult chapter, and because it is a long and a boring speech for them, which they cannot understand. So let's try to make things clear in this chapter. The first question arises is, who was Chief Seattle? He was actually a most prominent leader of Suquamish tribe. He was most popular among his people, and this speech was delivered by him at Washington in USA in 1854, when the white chief of Washington had extended the hands of friendship towards him and had sent greetings of goodwill. So in this speech, he has acknowledged the friendship that has been given, that has been extended by the great chief towards these people. Plus, the white chief of Washington has also offered them a comfortable place to live in if they give their land to the white chief, to the white people. So he is also praising his generosity that in exchange of their place, he is giving them a comfortable place to live in for the rest of their lives. In this speech, although he is quite happy that the white chief is doing a lot for them, but he also recalls the hostilities between the white and their tribe, the Red Indian tribe. Because in the past, the whites used to push their forefathers westwards. They were having great hostilities between each other. Chief Seattle says that the youth of his tribe are quite impulsive and they are always trying to take revenge, while the old people of his tribe are wise and they do not want to continue with the hostilities towards the white people. They want that everything should come to a standstill and peace should be maintained. Plus, he also says that the great chief of Washington is promising them that if they give their land to him, he will be, with the help of his brave soldiers, providing a wall of protection to these people against their two enemies. There were two enemies of the Suquamish tribe, Haidas and Tsimshians. The Haidas and Tsimshians were always troubling the people of this tribe, of the Chief Seattle's tribe, and the women and children were quite troubled by them. So the white chief is saying, the great chief of Washington is saying that I would help you to provide protection against these two enemies. Then he also says that the god of the white chiefs cannot be their own god. Why? Because the god of the white chiefs is always with them and protecting them. While he doesn't remember, the Chief Seattle doesn't remember that even their own god is with them. He feels that their own god has abandoned them and they are looking nowhere for help. Nobody is there to help them out. So he says that the religion of the white people and the religion of this tribe of Chief Seattle is quite different. So their gods cannot be same. Plus, he also says that the white people's God has given them 10 commandments written with his iron finger on the tablets. While he doesn't recall, the Chief Seattle doesn't recall that any of such commandments has been given by his own God. He says that our religion is only the tradition that is given by our ancestors, or whatever the religious beliefs that were followed by the old man, that still remains in their own heart and that is their own religion. Then he says that when the dead of the white chiefs they die, the old people they die, they cease to love them. They go away into the stars and never come back. While the people, the old people of his own tribe, Chief Seattle's tribe, when they die, they never cease loving them. They always are there with them, and whenever they are dejected or depressed, they come and they console them also, because they love their own land, they love their own country. Then he also says that the whites and the reds have never been in friendship with each other, because the reds, whenever they saw the whites, they always used to fly away, they always used to run away from them. They have never been in great contact with the whites. But he says that the proposal given by the white people this time is quite good, and they will think about the proposal. Maybe his men would agree, his people would agree, and they would go to that comfortable place provided by the white chief. He says that at this point also he is sometimes mourning at the death of his own tribe, that so quickly the people of his tribe are decreasing in number. But then he says that this is always the law of nature, that if one tribe finishes, the other tribe arises. One nation, after one nation finishes, the other nation arises. And so there is no need to mourn over such destructions. Last of all, he says that we will ponder upon your proposal, but on one condition. The condition is that you will never stop us from visiting this land which you will be taking from us, as we would always try to come here and pay homage to our ancestors, or to the graves of our young people also who have died, as the soil on which we are standing contains their feeling. It has a feeling that all of them are still there. And he says that even if the last man of the red tribe, of the red Indian tribe dies, still, even if there's nobody to bury him, but all the spirits will be around this land. Even if the white people feel that the streets are deserted at night and the shops are closed, these spirits of the red Indians would be coming and would throng all over the streets. They would throng the streets and they would pay visit to the homeland. This is what he says at the end. Now we have to look at the story. So let's read the story. Yonder sky that has wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. Today is fair, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. My words are like stars that never change. Whatever Seattle says, the great chief of Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as he can upon the return of sun or the seasons. So he says that look at the sky above. The sky above has always wept tears on our griefs. Whatever disaster we have always faced, the sky above us has always wept tears for us, for our disasters. And that too for centuries untold. That means he cannot recall that for how many centuries this has happened to their tribe, and for how many centuries the sky has cried on their disasters, on their grievances. So he says that this will always remain. This is everlasting. Always we will be suffering at the hands of the white people, and always the sky will be weeping tears on us, will be shedding tears on us. So he says that today is a good day, but tomorrow nobody knows. Maybe the sky may be overcast with clouds. That means if today it is fine, maybe tomorrow we will face more of the disasters. So he says that my words are like the stars which are countless in the sky. Though the great chief of Washington can rely on my words, whatever I say are always the same. The words are always the same, and he can rely on my words just as the return of sun and the seasons occur. Similarly, my words will always be there, the same, they will never change. The White Chief says that Big Chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. So there was a messenger, White Chief, who came there and he had brought the message from the Big Chief of Washington. So he says that he has brought the greetings of friendship and goodwill for us. This is kind of him, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. He says that this is quite generous of him, but we know that he is so much bigger in authority that he does not require our friendship. His people are many, they are like the grass that covers vast prairies. My people are few. They resemble the scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. The great and I presume good White Chief sends us word that he wishes to buy our land, but is willing to allow us enough to live comfortably. He says that the people of the White Chief's quantity is so much in number, it looks like the prairies grass which is in South America, I presume. But we, if we look at our own tribe, we are just like scattered trees which have been destroyed and uprooted by the storms. That means we are now less in number as compared to the huge number of people present in the white people. So he says that I wish that he is a good chief and he is willing to buy the land from us, and in exchange of that he is going to give us a land where we could live our rest of the lives comfortably. This indeed appears just, even generous, for the red man no longer has rights that he need respect, and the offer may be wise also, as we are no longer in need of an extensive country. So he says that we the red men now are so less in quantity that we do not require such a vast land, and I think this offer is quite wise, as this extensive country is now no longer of any use to us. Now second para says, there was a time when our people covered the land as the waves of wind ruffle sea cover its shell paved floor, but that time long since passed away with the greatness of tribes that are now but a mournful memory. He says there was a time when we were in large number, in so much large quantity of us were on this land, as if the waves of the sea, they rise up and then they fall like high tides. So much were we in number, but this was a very long time ago that we were in large number. But now that is only a memory, a mournful memory which we can only recall and we can think about. I will not dwell in or mourn over our untimely decay, nor reproach any my pale-faced brothers with hastening it, as we too may have been somewhat to blame. He says, but I will not think much about it, that we were large in number previously, now we are less in number, because there is no use pondering over it for the untimely decay, because to some extent we are also responsible for our destruction, as our brothers are also responsible for our destruction. How? Let's see in the third para. Youth is impulsive. The youth of the red man is quite impulsive. They always try to paint their faces black when they become angry. They try to take revenge and they go out without thinking, without making any plans. They immediately go out. They are often cruel and relentless. So the young people of his tribe are so cruel, and they, without taking revenge, cannot stop. But the old men of his tribe are so wise that they want peace. They do not want any type of taking revenge or any type of fight with the white man. So he says that the white man, once it was a time when the white man and the red man were, you can say, opponents of each other. They had hostilities, and the white man, they pushed the forefathers or the ancestors of the red man towards the west. They wanted to occupy the entire land. And revenge by young men is considered gain. He says that our young men think that when we take revenge, it is a huge profit, it is a huge victory. Though they may die in the battle, but they feel that even if we lose our lives, it is a great victory for us. Not thinking about their parents or about the elderly people who are sitting at home and weeping tears for their sacrifice, that what have these young people done in great anger. Then comes a fourth para. Our good father in Washington, for I presume he is now our father as well as yours, since King George has moved his boundaries further north, our great and good father. In this fourth para, he is addressing him as father. Why? Because now he is ready to give protection to them from the two enemies of their tribe. The enemies, as I told you in the summary, that Haidas and Tsimshians. They always try to trouble the red man, and so the great chief of Washington is now trying to give them protection. So he says that if he does so, then he will be our father. He will protect us, his brave warriors will be to us bristling wall of his strength. So his brave warriors will be the wall of protection for us from the two tribes who are our enemies. Then in reality he will be our father and we his children. He says that then we will consider him to be our father if he provides us this type of protection, and we will be his children. But then he again ponders over it. He says that can that ever be? Because your God is not our God. So he says that the God of the whites is not our God. Why? Because he stays with them, he walks with them, and he makes them stronger and stronger day by day and makes them wax like very strong. But our father, he has forsaken his red children if they really are his. He says if we say that your God is our God, we cannot say that. Because it seems that he has forsaken us, he has left us, and he is trying to always be with the white man. And our God, the Great Spirit, seems also to have forsaken us. He says that even our God seems to have abandoned us, and we are like orphans, moving here and there, looking for our protection, that who will help us out. Our people are ebbing away like a rapidly receding tide that will never return. The white man's God cannot love our people, or he would protect them. They seem to be orphans who can look nowhere for help. So this is what he says, that we are just like ebbing waves. Ebbing tides means, as you people must have studied in geography or whatever, that the tides are in ebb and you can say ebbing away means moving back. When the tides they rise and then they move back, they again come. He says that we are receding tides that will never come back to the shore, and we are just decreasing in number, and it seems that soon we will decay and we will never come back. But our God, he is nowhere, and we are looking nowhere for help because nobody is there to help us out. We are just like orphans. Can your God become our God and renew our prosperity and awaken in us dreams of returning greatness? So he asked the white chief, can your God be our God also and help us to resume our prosperity and whatever is lost in our tribe? If we have a common heavenly father, he must be partial. He says if you say that God is one and he is the one and only heavenly father, then we will say that he is partial, because he has given lot of love and protection to you people, but he has abandoned us and we have never seen him. He has given you 10 commandments written on the iron tablet with his iron fingers, but for us he has given no word. So now we are two distinct races. So in a way we can say that we are two distinct races, we have different religion, we have different gods, and we have different beliefs. So there is nothing common in us. Then comes a fifth para in which he says that the ashes of our ancestors are very sacred to us. Even this the ground of burial in which we bury them is a spiritual land for us. Then he says that you wander far from graves of your ancestors. He says to the white chiefs, when you bury the graves, your ancestors in the graves, then you run away from that land, and you never seem to have respect for them. Your religion was written upon tablets, which was written by the iron finger of God. But our religion is the tradition that is provided by our ancestors, and the dreams of our old men, which still stirs in our heart. We carry those dreams of our old men, and that is only our religion. Your dead cease to love you. He says that when your people die, they cease to love you. They forget you and your country, and they move into the stars and never come back. But our deads, when they are buried, they never forget us, they never forget our land. They are always in these verdant valleys, in the hills, in the murmuring rivers, in the mountains, in the lakes, in the bays. And whenever we people feel dejected, they come to console us and soothe our spirits. Day and night cannot dwell together. The red man has ever fled the approach of the white man. He says that like day and night cannot be together. When day comes, night goes away. Similarly, whenever the red man saw the sight of the white man, they always fled away. They never had good terms with those people. So, but your proposal seems to be quite attractive and quite wise, and I think my people will accept this. And then we will dwell for the rest of our lives in the comfortable place that you will give us. So it seems as if White Chief seems to be the words of nature speaking to us, that now we do not require much of the land and we are on the verge of our end. So he says it matters a little where we pass our remaining days, because there is no single star of hope left that ever we will be enjoying our lives in prosperity. Now it seems that darkness is there everywhere, and soon we will be hearing the footsteps of our end. Just like a doe hears the footsteps of the hunter and she knows that my death is coming. Similarly, we are also trying to hear the footsteps of our end, and we know that soon our end will be there. Then he says a few more moons, a few more winters. Only a little time is left in our lives. We will be seeing a few more moons, few more winters, and after that, little by little, our descendants will keep on vanishing, and when the last man of our tribe will be left, there will be nobody to bury him. But why should I ponder on this, and why should I mourn? Because it is the law of nature that when one tribe destroys, the other tribe arises. When one nation vanishes, the other nation arises. So this is a law of nature. So your decay will also be there. He says to the white people that your decay will also be there, though it may take time. Even though your God is with you, but He cannot stop your decay. One day when you people will decay, then only we will be brothers when we meet in heaven. So he last of all says that we will ponder over your proposition and we will decide and tell you, but on the condition that you will always allow us to come on this land and pay homage, and we should visit the graves of our ancestors, and even the graves of the young men and women and children who have died. Because every part of this soil is sacred to us, and every grove, every river, every mountain. So he says that even the rocks and everything contains their memories. So we would soon visit these people, and even if the last man of our tribe vanishes, still their spirit will always be there in this land, because it is rich with the blood of our ancestors. Then last of all, he says that our departed braves, fond mothers, glad, happy-hearted maidens, all of them who have lived here and rejoiced here all through their lives, will love the somber solitudes, because when at night the streets are deserted, the shops are closed, and you people are at your homes, or your children are walking in the streets in the solitudes, the spirits of our people would be moving all around the streets and would throng the streets, and they will never be left alone. So he says that let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless, they are always here and they are always taking care of us. So there is no death, it is only a change of the world. We'll leave this world and we'll move to the other world. So this is the end of the story, in which the proposal is given to him and how he accepts it, what condition he keeps. This is the main logic or the main story. So hope most of the things are clear to you people. If you like this video, press on the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.